I'm Corey, the art archaeologist, so welcome to dig number 4 of the jelly plate excavation. Now I'm doing something really off the beaten path today with the jelly plate, and I wanted to share it with you. So I've got this 9x12 canvas panel here, Master's Touch. This is a brand you can find at Hobby Lobby, but they've got these all over the place. It's just a thick, well, it's a solid canvas board, we'll call it that. It does have some texture on it. It's got canvas texture. And then what I'm using today, now you can use any modeling paste or plaster that you have, but what I'm using is my bare Venetian plaster. Okay, and the only reason I'm using this is because this is what I've got. So quick tip, this was the chemicals in this had separated because I've had this for so long, and the way I resolve that so that I can continue to use my products is I have a little hand blender that I got at Walmart, and I just toss it in there and blend it, and I keep it separate from my food blender, but it works beautifully, and you can save your plasters, and you can even use that on house paint if you have a years old house paint can and you don't want to stand there and manually stir the thing for 20 minutes. You can just use a little handheld blender. So now these are called Japan scrapers, and they come in a pack with this size, and a little narrow one. But this is a specific faux finish tool. You do not need this. You can use a palette knife. You can use a little trowel. Use what you have. I'm really big on using what you have. What we're going to do here is I'm going to take quite a bit of this, and I'm going to load it on my trowel. Let's go ahead and do 2. I want this texture pretty thick. This, I did my entire house with this texture when I was younger and stronger and stupider. I would not do this today. I would do an accent wall just because I'm older is the only reason why. So you want to completely cover your board with this plaster, okay? And you want to go in different directions. Now I'm starting to spill it. You can even use your little palette knife. You don't have to use your trowel if you don't want to. I'm really training myself to work smaller with these same faux finishes now, and it's quite a challenge. I've got you pretty far back here. Okay, that's a little better. Why don't we go like this so that you can see it all? Okay, now a couple things about plasters and modeling pastes and stuff like that, especially with plasters. You really don't ever put any of this stuff down your drain. I put my tools, I try to wipe them off with a paper towel. And if I can get them clean with a paper towel when I'm done with them, that's what I generally do. You can soak your tools in water, but you never want to dump that water down the drain because this product is self-sealing and it can create huge plumbing problems for you. It's as bad as putting candle wax down the sink, and I really don't want to have to say it, but I better, just to CYA, you know? Okay, so I've got a nice thick layer on here. And then we're going to create what I call chatter. And this is, I was taught this in my faux finishing classes. So you get your coat on there. Okay, and then you're going to take your trowel. You can even do it with this tool right here, but you're going to push your trowel or your scraper or your palette knife into the product, and you want to pull up that product just like so. You want to go all over and pull that all up just like that, okay? And then you've got to work with a really clean edge. So I'm going to scrape that off, and then I'm going to scrape all this product off and put it back in my can because I don't want to waste it. Venetian plaster is pricey, but there's nothing like it on the market. It's a powerful, powerful plaster, and it's bendable, it's self-sealing, it's an amazing product. So the price reflects that. You can get a quart of it if you're doing little stuff like this. I would just get a quart, it'll last you a long time. Okay, now that you've got all that pulled up like that, you want to come in and you want to knock it down. And you want to take your trowel or your palette knife and go in different directions. Okay, so that you don't have a weird pattern in there. You just want to do different directions. And now see how that knocks all of that texture down? Now your texture is in there, but it's underneath. Let's say, and you really want to go like just 10%. You don't want to be up like this or you'll knock all your texture right off, okay? So you don't want to do that. But let's say you've smoothed out an area too much. Just come back in. Get some chatter going again. Also, see this trowel line here? You want to have your trowel moving before you lay it down to avoid getting those trowel lines in here. Okay, it just takes a little practice. And you can knock it down and then pull it back up as long as it's still wet. Okay, so now we've got this nice little textured board here. I'm going to take that extra and put it in my can as fast as possible. And you want to work pretty darn fast because this stuff dries. It sets up pretty quick. Now the thicker it is, of course, the longer it takes to set up. So, and we put it on pretty thick. Okay, I'm just going to come in here and scrape these edges. You can also do this finish on thick mylar plastic as well if you'd like. I like the canvas boards for doing fun little projects like this. So now we've got our beautiful plaster texture. See all that in there? And you want to let this dry now. I'm going to walk away from this for the day because it's very thick. I may even give this 24 hours. So I will be right back and we'll do the next step. Okay, so here's our texture board all dry. I let it sit for about 4 hours. And it could use overnight, but we can go ahead and do the next step. There's an indication of all of the beautiful texture on here. And even though you can't see it very clearly right now, you will definitely see it when we paint this. So I've got this little stencil that I got a long time ago at Joann's. And I want to use this design right here. And these two little ones too, I think. So I want this to be right here, and I'm just going to use my plaster. I'm using my little scraper here with the Venetian plaster. Kind of want this, no, I like it in alignment. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then you just want to run an even amount of your plaster or your modeling paste just over the design you're on. You want to really watch your edges and how far you go. And you want a nice uniform layer of the plaster, whatever you're using. You want to have napkins and some printer paper handy while you're doing this too. Takes a few passes, especially with the stencil like this. There's a lot of detail in this stencil. You want to make sure you hit it all. Okay, so once that's done, you want to go ahead and pull this up carefully. Beautiful, that came out really nice. Now I'm just going to move that. Take this stencil and just scrape all of that excess plaster completely off as much as I can. And I like to clean my stencils with baby wipes. I used to clean them with soap and water, and I made it all complicated. I'll leave that, that's pretty. Now I just use a paper towel or a baby wipe, and that's good enough. Okay, so I've still got some product on my little scraper here, and I want to add a couple more of these. So you want to be careful, of course, not to run into your design. I'm going to kind of make this one uniform with all of these. I don't know why I'm feeling like doing that, but I'm going to do it. Okay, I've got way too much. Okay, that came out nice and uniform there. And again, very carefully. It's really not necessary to tape your stencils down unless you're doing big walls or something. I just don't. I just hold it. If you have trouble with steadiness, then by all means you can just slap some blue tape on there and that works perfect. So let's go ahead and throw a couple more in here. I like everything off center, of course. Now here's this other one here. Go up here right in the corner. I'm really making this kind of contrived and very uniform, but you gotta go with what moves you. Sometimes it's okay. Okay, I went way over the edge with that plaster. So let's take this off gently. Oh, that came out good. I even was kind of messy with it. Okay, and then you want to get rid of that edge. So that just happens to the best of us, and I can dig some of that plaster that I went overboard out of that texture to keep that texture. No big deal at all. Okay, so we've got our 3. I'm thinking, let's do this little tiny one, but everything's wet. This is where it gets tricky because you don't want to touch anything. Okay, so I went ahead and did this little one in the corner. You get the idea. I just did a partial. And I just cleaned off that plaster off the edge real quick. And then here's this little one. I just went ahead and chanced it and it worked out fine. So now all this has to dry completely. I'm going to let this whole thing sit for 24 hours and I'll be back for the next step. Okay, so here's our board all dry. I actually walked away from this for a couple days and it really doesn't, it's pretty thin, so it doesn't need 24 hours. If you probably went 3 to 4 hours per coat on a little board like this, you'd be fine. So my idea for this is a deep, rich Moroccan style finish. So the colors I've chosen to do this are alizarin crimson hue and quinacridone nicolazo gold, and I may use some neon orange, and I'm going to show you why. But let's go ahead and get some paint on our board. Okay, our board is pretty heavily textured, so this ought to be interesting. I'm going to put this heavier bodied alizarin crimson on my little 8x10 plate over here, and then I want to try to keep everything as wet as I can. So then I've got the nicolazo. This one is like, well, not, there we go. Okay, so I want to put this on, and this is pretty darn fluid, and then I want to load up a bunch of this other red on here and mix these together. Oh, that is a juicy layer, which is fine. Perfectly good. There's got to be a lot of lines in this. Just thinking you're gonna want it thicker because this board is so textured, but you don't have to worry about it going down into the crevices. Got a plan for that later. Oh my, wow, ooh, gorgeous. Okay, now look at this beautiful print. I'm going to let this dry real quick, and then we'll put some black on this and pull this. It's gorgeous. Okay, I should have anticipated that I was going to get a gorgeous imprint here. So I changed my mind. I'm going to try this golden green gold fluid color. Yeah. Pretty nice, very nice. That's the nice beginnings of a print. And then I had some Titan buff on the bottom, so that's showing up too. But really, I love it when you get a partial print like that. Really lovely. Okay. Okay, so I went ahead and put another layer of the Folk Art Neon Orange paint on here because I wanted it to have just a little bit more pop. Now for the next step, I'm just using Artist's Loft Mars Black. The reason I'm not using golden for this step is because I don't want the binders to be so strong, okay, because we're going to do a removing technique. So I've got a blob of it here, and then I've got a little bit of water, and I'm just going to really thin this black paint out. You don't want it the consistency of ink. You definitely want it thicker than ink. But you do want it thinned out and movable. And you want enough to cover your whole project in one shot. I like to do it in one shot. Just mix up a tiny bit more here. Okay, now you want to cover the entire board with this black. Really jam it down into that texture. Boy, I did 2 big blobs. I hope I made enough. I might even need some more. All right, so now that you have all this paint on here and it's nice and juicy wet, you want to let this set up. You want to really take a good look at it and make sure you got all the white spots blacked out or muted out with whatever color you're choosing to use. The reason I'm doing this is because I have this really dramatic Moroccan theme in my mind about how I want this to look in the end. So it looks almost perfectly black. Now just go ahead and let that set up. You don't want it completely dry, but you want it dry enough to where it's going to stay in the recesses of your piece. Okay, be right back. Okay, so this still has a bit of the sheen on it here and there, and I'm just going to take this dry paper towel and take a swipe at it and see where I'm at. Okay, it's pretty well set up now. So now what we're going to do is pull this back. You want a little squirt bottle, and you want a very, very light touch-up first. See how gorgeous that orange and red is under there? So I'm going to let this set up for a second, tell you a cool tip. Now, the thing about cheaper paints is they have less binders and they're not as strong. And then, so by the same token, the more expensive paints, the golden paints, the more you pay, the stronger the binders. And I would guess that to be the case across the board. It is for sure the case with golden acrylics, okay? So you can use this information greatly to your advantage, and the reason why is because I want something with a little less binding power for this top coat because I'm going to wipe it back. So that works to my advantage in that regard. Now the undercoats of this, the neon orange I put on top is folk art. That is not going to be as strong as the golden, but I've got a lot of golden on the bottom of this with the stronger binders. So you want that because as you're wiping this and messing with this, you want that lower coat to stay put. So, you know, all these little bits and details of information about your products can really work to your advantage. Okay, so now when you start getting paint, you really kind of just have to immediately move to a different part of your paper towel. Now you can also use a baby wipe on this, but I would probably leave it sit now. See how that's starting to come off? Because your baby wipe straight out of the pack is going to be too wet for this finish, and you're going to pull too much of your paint off. We're after a real dramatic Moroccan style finish here. I want all that black to stay deep within the recesses. So I am not at all digging my hands into this. I am literally and only just trying to take the paint off of the raised surface, okay? Because that's the part we want to pop. This is how you can really, I mean, you guys saw at the beginning of this section how boring and lame this piece looked, and now that we're antiquing it and we're starting to knock back some of that black and letting that orange shine through, doesn't that just look phenomenal compared to how it looked before? There's a lot of steps in finishes like this, in layered art and faux finishing, that, you know, the secret is in the layers, literally. You can have the ugliest layers and then you do one more thing like this and you've got pure magic. Okay, I'm going to flip this around just because it's easier for me this way. And now when you have a part that you just really want to pull very little paint off, then you can go ahead and use a more dirtied up part of your paper towel. But to get those initial layers of black off, you really want some clean spots because you end up just moving that paint around. Isn't that pretty? And you would have never known that this was living inside, that the potential of this was in that ugly layer of orange and red. It wasn't really ugly, but it wasn't anything special, I didn't think. Now this is something special here. Okay, and you know, the orange is really coming through and the red is not so much, but that's all right. I do want more of this orange to be shining just because I want more of the contrast that I got up here, but I did get a little heavy with it right there. Okay, a chunk of the paint came off right there. So I'm going to grind some black into that spot. Kind of be wary of that. That can happen. You just want to, I already washed my brush. Just take a little bit of paint. Jam it right in there. Okay, so for the next step, I grabbed a couple stencil brushes and I'm going to be using the golden alizarin crimson hue, and I'm going to use this color shift, this black and gold folk art color shift. So you want to get your stencil again and line it up. Okay, so once again, we're going to dry brush this, and I'm going to take my stencil. I want to load all of those bristles up equally, just like that, okay? And that's pretty wet right there. So I'm going to take my paper towel and take a little off. And then I just want to come in, make sure it's lined up, and gently pounce here and there. I want to distribute some of this red on here. Color shift. Oh, it's nice. Okay, so now what I want to do is I still have a little of this color shift on my plate here, and I want to really just very gently put that color shift here and there just to kind of pull everything together. You really want to be very dry and gentle. And just kind of scrape it across that textured surface. This is a really easy way to tone things down or to brighten them up, depending on what color you're using. So I've knocked that burnt orange back, that orange look back just a bit with that. Okay, so far our piece is looking really cool, and it's got quite a few layers on here, so I like a lot of layers. I think it adds a lot of depth, but I really want to make these pop with some pure folk art pure gold metallic paint. So let's do a little of that. Now that is the magic touch. That's the magic layer. You just keep layering and then you'll fall in love and you'll know you're done at that point. So let's go ahead and add some of this gold to the rest. So here's our Moroccan Dreams piece, all complete now. So in addition to the texture you get from laying down your plaster and then putting your plaster designs on here, you get another layer of texture from pulling the paint a few layers from your jelly plate. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I invite you to. I've got more art excavations coming up, and I've got treasure hunting Tuesdays. So a lot of fun stuff going on my channel here, and 'tis the season for eco dyeing. So I'll be doing a lot of eco dyed kits coming up real soon. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.